many of you remember second grade? You go, oh, that's a long time. In second grade, you remember when they used to have you make like your own little personal Mother's Day cards and stuff to send your mom? Well, I was actually looking at some stuff online this week, and a couple of little card statements. A girl named Angie, 8 years old, wrote this: "Dear Mother, I'm going to make dinner for you on Mother's Day. It's going to be a surprise. P.S. I hope you like pizza and popcorn." Eileen said, "Dear Mother, I wish Mother's Day wasn't always on Sunday. It would be better if it were more Monday so we wouldn't have to go to school." Can we get an amen on that, right? Little Diane wrote these words: "I hope you like the flowers I got you for Mother's Day. I picked them myself when Mr. Smith wasn't looking." But I actually found some pictures of some actual second grade Mother's Day cards online. This one here, you see they took the card where it said "relax, enjoy some sunshine" and marked all that out. "Could you make my bed? Also, I'm hungry and the laundry needs to be done. Have a happy Mother's Day, your favorite child, Colin." Here's another one. My mom likes drinking wine. We got a picture of her. "Dear Mom, you are nice, funny, and you love me. I know your hormones are crazy." Wait a minute, I wasn't done. Go back. "But I don't mind because you still love me." Okay, now go ahead. "Dear Mom, you are the best mom I could ever have. I want you to bring me McDonald's. Love, Andrew." I got time for one or two more. They're the best. "Dear Mom, thank you so much for being my mom. If I had a different mom, I would punch her in the face and go find you." I got one more. This is my favorite. Some of you moms and kids can relate. "Thank you, Mom, for being wonderful and caring and not making your meatloaf anymore." Well, you know the beautiful thing about these cards, and as all 7- and 8-year-olds do, in their own unique and special way, they're expressing their appreciation to their mom. I mean, you can tell that these kids love their mothers. Most of them feel pretty comfortable with their mothers, except maybe that kid whose mom's a wino. But in their own way, they're trying to show how much they love and appreciate their mother. And Proverbs chapter 31 is kind of like an ancient version of what we just read. Because in Proverbs chapter 31, usually when you hear that, people get down to the last verses, they read it at weddings and stuff. They skip over the early stuff, but the early stuff is actually the good stuff, which is so meaningful to us today. And it's written by a guy named King Lemuel, and he's reciting the advice that his mother gave him when he was a little boy growing up and he knew he was going to be king. And he was repeating the things that she felt he needed to know to be a good boy. And here's what he says: "These are the words of King Lemuel, the message his mother taught him. My son, I gave birth to you. You are the son I prayed for. Don't waste your strength on women or your time on those who ruin kings. Kings should not drink wine, Lemuel, and rulers should not desire beer. If they drink, they might forget the law and keep the needy from getting their rights. Give beer to the people who are dying and wine to those who are sad. Let them drink and forget their need and remember their misery no more. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves." This is actually my favorite part. "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Defend the rights of all those who have nothing. Speak up and judge fairly, and defend the rights of the poor and needy." Now, in these early verses of Proverbs 31, mom's giving advice to her son. These are the things. And in those few verses, she said stuff like, be careful who you date, and you want to marry wisely. Don't hang out with questionable women. You heard her say not to drink alcoholic beverages that would cloud your judgment. And since he was going to become king, she said, be sure to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. That's a theme you see in multiple places throughout the Old Testament. And as the king, he stood between evil and good for the sake of his people. Now, there are other things that she most likely told him when he was growing up and running around the palace halls and all that. She probably said, we want you to stand up straight, clean your room, eat your vegetables, brush your teeth, and probably like all moms, and always wear clean underwear in case you're in an accident. Right? But here's the interesting thing. Those stuff there, eat your vegetables, clean underwear, brush your teeth, those didn't make the cut. And these pieces of advice that stuck with her son, these are the things that he thought were most important throughout all of his life. And the king goes on to explain some things that his mother taught him, and what a woman would look like in the future, and the kind of woman he might want to marry. And go on to the next slide for me. He says, son, it's hard to find a good wife because she is worth more than rubies. Her husband trusts her completely, and with her, he has everything he needs. She does him good and not harm for as long as she lives. She looks for wool and flax and likes to work with her hands, and she is like a trader's ship, bringing food from far away. She gets up while it's still dark and prepares food for her family and feeds the servant girls. She inspects a field and buys it. With money she earns, she plants a vineyard. She does her work with energy, and her arms are strong, and she knows that what she makes is good. Her lamp burns late into the night. She makes thread with her hands and weaves her own cloth. She welcomes the poor and helps the needy. She does not worry about her family when it snows because they have all fine clothes to keep them warm. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothes are made of linen and other expensive materials. Her husband is known at the city meetings where he makes decisions as one of the leaders of the land. She makes linen clothes and sells them and provides belt to the merchants. And she is strong and is respected by the people. She looks forward to the future with joy. She speaks wise words and teaches others to be kind. She watches over her family, never wastes her time. Her children speak well of her. Her husband also praises her, saying, there are many fine women, but you are better than them all. And so in the early verses, she's teaching him as a little boy the kind of things that he might want to have as values when he becomes king. And then she talks about the kind of things that a woman that he might want to look for and be prepared for. She's teaching her what it's like. She's teaching her son what it's like to live a noble and virtuous life. And I think this is a mom who was extremely invested in her son, who really wanted the best for him, who worked hard for him, with him, and because of him, who instilled values in him. And I thought, you know what? I could probably stand up here for the rest of the morning ad nauseum and talk about the wonderful things that my mother, as a woman of God, said and did for me, very similar to what we just read. But then I thought, that's a pretty high bar for the rest of you to have to follow. Actually, I'm just kidding. First thing that popped into my mind is you got some amazing women who love God and love their families here in this church. Amen. And I could pop some pictures up on the screen and say some nice things, but I thought better of that too. I thought maybe it's best that you hear from the people whose lives are being inspired and encouraged like this king's was, if they would come up and join me right now and share with this. Rachel, I'm going to ask you to go first and set the bar really high for everybody else.
Okay. My mom is actually here today. She's right over here.
What's your mother's name?
Her name is Vicki. Mom, I can't even begin to describe you. You are the best mother I could ask for. You have taught me to love others and to be kind, and you have taught me compassion. Mom, you are there for me every day, no matter what I'm going through. You wipe my tears when I'm sad. You sit with me as I cry on your shoulder, and you let me unload on you. You talk me through everything, and you're always there to listen. No matter how bad something is, you are there for me and willing to listen to what I have to say. You pray with me, and you make sure I'm on the path of God, and that's all I could ask for a mother. You are the best mother ever, and I wouldn't trade you for the world.
Yourself about your mom.
My mom is awesome. I don't know where to start. She's done many things. She's taught me how to be caring, responsible, forgiving, much more. I never asked for another mom. She's always been there for me. I love you.
I think my mom's a really genuine person, and she always acts the same in front of everybody, which is a good thing. And also, she's probably the more mature one out of my two parents.
Best line of the day.
And she's a really great mom, and I love her. And happy Mother's Day.
Most of you know my mom, Becky. Known her for a long time. Brilliant, right? Anyway. My mom has taught me how to have faith, taught me how to worship, how to use music in my life, and how to share that with other people. She has been a single mom and worked to make sure me and my sister were taken care of. And that wasn't easy because we fought all the time. And I wasn't always as great as I am now.
Yeah.
But my mom has been a great example for me and for my grandkids, her grandkids, my kids. And I don't know what else to say, Mom, I love you.
My mom, she's always kind and helping. She's taught me many things. She's very good at making pancakes in the morning. She's always loving. She's always willing to pray with me and just help me if I'm having any struggles or just anything. Happy Mother's Day.
Come here. Now, this one's a little unique in that we get to honor our moms, right? And that rightfully so. But Nick, you have a very special relationship with your mother-in-law. Tell us about that.
Well, she's the one who's trained behind me, over there in the corner, under the screen. Yeah, a little bit different, mother-in-law, but the law didn't really ever have to tell me that she was mom. She's been nothing but since the very beginning before me and my wonderful wife were married. And just to echo everything that everybody else said, she's been amazing throughout. I've been blessed with a lot of amazing women in my life, and she's a continuation of that. So just thank you for everything, Mom. I love you so much. And yeah, happy Mother's Day.
Now, you guys are unique to everyone else up here in that you actually have to share a mother. So, you're better prepared than Dave. We'll let you go first. You got your PowerPoint and...
My mom has been there for everything. Whenever I was in middle school, she was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, but there was not a single time that she ever missed anything. I was on the world's worst middle school basketball team. Never won a game. I don't think so at all. But even through chemotherapy and radiation, she didn't miss a single game. She was always there in the front row cheering for me, and even if she had to have a popcorn bucket, it was not filled with popcorn, she was there. And even through high school, she was there for me. And I just really appreciate that we could have a great relationship, because I know a lot of kids in high school did not have a good relationship with their mothers. But we would go on our Friday night Goodwill shopping. We would try on all the hats, and I think we deserve an award for accomplishing not getting head lice from out like the hundreds of hats that we had. And probably the one thing that I can take away from what she has taught me is to forgive. Anytime that we had ever had an argument, which was a lot because I was a horrible, horrible child, anytime she would always come in and say sorry to me first. Or if she would argue with my brother, she would say sorry to him first. And that's something that is really difficult, especially since I'm a stubborn person. And if I were to pair her with a Bible verse, I picked out Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31 and 32. It says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ forgave you." Love you, Mom.
She was supposed to go last so she could top what I was going to say. So, as you said, my mom was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer when I was in my senior year of high school. And unless you were around her and you knew that, you wouldn't have known that. She is the strongest woman I've ever met in my life. There's not a single person in here that can top her. Sorry. She's the reason that I'm up here playing guitar constantly, from pushing me to be on the worship team to allow me to play. I wanted to play drums at first, but between her and my dad, they wouldn't let me, so I guess I had to pick. But there's truly no words that I can say that would be full enough to truly encompass what you've been able to do for us. I was the angel child until I moved out. When I moved out, obviously my mom was not there, and that kind of gives any indication that she was the reason I was the angel child. And behind every great man, there's a mom who's been sent there all along the way. Love you, Mom.
We like to make church interesting, so you heard all of these people talk about they have the greatest mother and the best mom. Apologize. Next week we're setting a boxing rink up in here, and they're going to duke it out as who has the best mom. Would you say thank you to these folks this morning? One of the common threads that you heard, actually there were two common threads you heard from these folks up here that actually find parallel in my own life. And that is, all of the ladies that they were talking about, the two threads are this. They love God, and they love their families. Right? And I think that's what the king was talking about when he wrote this particular chapter. It seems fitting that he had a mother who taught him how to be a person of values, and a person of character, and to provide for others. And I thought about what these folks were saying. I thought about some of the things, especially as Gabe was talking, that shaped my life as what I end up doing now. And there's a mother who sang the solos at church. That was back then you didn't have worship bands and worship leaders. You had song leaders. Remember those days? Turn in your hymnal to number, right? That was my mom back in the day. She was also the vacation Bible school director, the Sunday school superintendent, and she served on our church board. Verse 30 in the stuff that I read says, "Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." I think we heard a lot of that commonality among the folks who were up here. We heard Judah talk about how his mom teaches him how to be forgiving and responsible and to have respect for others. I think good moms teach that. We heard them talk about how mothers praying for them and caring for them and providing for them in the emotional sense, and when things were difficult and things were tough. You have all that stuff going on. And the king said that she is a virtuous woman who is successful. And her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. I thought about how my mom honored my dad. My dad wasn't an elder in the land. He didn't serve in the city hall. My dad was a blue-collar factory worker. Driving down here this morning, I was thinking more about my dad than my mom, thinking about the hours he would put in and how he would work like double shifts so he could trade off to be at my football games on Friday nights. Thinking about all of that, and yet not really realizing, you guys know the phrase, it's a leadership phrase, but most of the best things in life are caught, not taught. Are you familiar with that? That's why no parent does algebra, right? And I saw how my mom honored my dad, respected my dad. In the times when he was working the crazy shift work hours, in a very appropriate way, how she humbled herself before my dad to serve him in appropriate ways. Of course, my mom wasn't a one-trick pony. As once we all got into school, she went off and then she started working for the school system, became a dietitian, and served the family that way. She's an honorable woman. And the king talked about that. In verse 26, there in your notes, the whole thing's there in your notes. Circle verse 26. He tells us that a virtuous woman speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. Now, did you not hear those sentiments echo in each of these folks up here this morning? You heard some wisdom as they guided them. You heard some loving kindness and compassion. You heard values that were transferred and translated from mom to child. It's a woman who teaches her children about God. This is a woman who's not satisfied that her son and daughter will just be good with math or good with science. She's not satisfied that her children are only successful in the business world or the marketplace. This is a woman in the Proverbs, and I think we saw that echoed here. That until her children understand the value of God's will and God's word, she knows that their success is always going to be empty. When I used to, my sisters and I, before we started school, and then once we started school, in elementary school anyway, before we go to bed at night, Mom would visit each of our rooms. And you know those blue and gold Bible story books like they used to have in your dentist office? She would read those stories. I think before I started kindergarten, I knew all about the primary Old Testament characters of David and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Moses, and Noah, and Solomon. She would do that with my sisters and me, and then she would tell us whatever was on our minds, we could just pray about, and God would help us take care of it, and then she'd lead us in a little prayer. She would do those kinds of things. I like that Rachel said that she could talk to her mom about anything, even things that she knew would disappoint her mother, and then her mother would pray with her. I like the fact that a woman of God who's raising a teenage daughter understands the difference between judgment and correction, understands the difference between praying and ultimate discipline. You tracking with me? I find that there's virtue in that. I think Rachel was very fortunate that she could share those kinds of things, and I appreciated her transparency up here as a 16-year-old young lady finding her way in the world now and honoring her parents like that. I recently read some research about mothers who have influence on their children, and it said that whether they have strong influence on their children, whether or not their children have strong consciences, that kind of stuff gets transferred. It said that they had strong influence on their children, whether their children instinctively knew how to choose between right and wrong, or whether their children were prone to be selfish or prone towards cheating, that if they would share with others and play by the rules of life, that they could learn to get ahead, that mothers influence those things. But I also understand that Christian mothers know that they aren't perfect, right? Christian mothers know that they have flaws. They used to be junior high girls too and went through that phase, tracking with me. Christian mothers get that. They understand that while they have significant impact on their children, that sometimes it's also important for them to recognize their own weaknesses, and maybe even to the degree that it's healthy and age appropriate, share some of those with their own children. I was reading some greater advanced type of studies being done just recently on those types of things, that mothers who were teaching their daughters how to be women. And here's something that caught my attention. These mothers knew that they could also pass along things of strong influence and character development. They also equally knew that they could pass along their own character flaws. Because moms who are virtuous women know that they too have fallen short of the glory of God. And so wise mothers put a high priority on God's influence in their lives. And here were some of the things that were given as examples in that study that I was reading just this past week. In a church near Kansas City, there is a cement sidewalk that has the prints of 2 baby feet on it, and they're pointing down the sidewalk towards the church. And what they said was 20 years ago, when that sidewalk was being laid, a mother actually got permission to take her little baby out there, and once the concrete was there, to put his little feet stamped into the concrete that would be there forever in the wet cement. And the message that she wanted sent to her child, and she wanted sent to the community, is that she had wanted her little boy to start right, but she knew that she would sometimes fail, so that he would always have his feet pointed towards the church where God would continue to instruct him. I thought that was pretty cool. And then the study went on to comment about some of the men that we would consider great throughout the history of our wonderful nation and the influence of godly mothers. Abraham Lincoln said, "All that I am, I owe to my angel mother." Gabe was the angel son, his mother apparently not, but you track him. George Washington said almost exactly the same thing. He said, "All that I am, I owe to my mother." General Douglas MacArthur said, "My sainted mother taught me devotion to God and a love of country, which has ever sustained me. To her I yield anew a son's reverent thanks." And I think that's what the king was doing, as he was pouring himself out, as his mother had instructed him and proclaimed wisdom into his life and helped him. And I thought, pretty cool thing to end with what he said about his mother. There in the last couple of verses, he said, a mother watches over her family and never wastes her time. Her children speak well of her. Her husband also praises her, saying, there are many fine women, but you are better than them all. Charm can fool you and beauty can trick you, but a woman who respects the Lord should be praised. And then he tells us how she should be praised. He said, give her the reward she has earned, and she should be praised in public for what she has done. So I'd like for all the women in the room to stand today. We're going to give you the reward you have earned, and we're going to praise you in public. It's not a trick. Go ahead and stand to your feet, ladies. All women, we have the reward for you. Now, you can go to any church in America and get a flower. You can go to any church in America on Mother's Day and maybe get a bookmark. But no, we're giving you the reward you have earned. Ladies, we have Happy Mother's Day Hershey bars for all the women. And the reason we have these men, go ahead and pass them out, is because all the men know how important chocolate is in a lady's life. So if you pass the bars out, and ladies, if you would stay standing, we're going to take a moment and honor you. Make sure Donna, who can't stand because of some recent health stuff, can get her a candy bar. Make sure Stevie gets one too. Every lady in this room have a candy bar. You got your chocolate. This is the reward you have earned. The Bible says so. We missing somebody? Who? Now here's what I know. If we were doing a similar thing on Father's Day, you wouldn't have been much more organized, right? Let me pray with you. God, it is readily clear, based on the testimonies of the children who stood up here. Some of them are teenage children, some of them are adult children. That there are virtuous women a part of this congregation. Women who love you and fear you and honor you. Women who pass on those virtues of faith to sons and daughters and sons-in-law. Women of patience and prayer. Women who raise little devils and little angels in the same household. It's readily clear that the future in the ministry of this church, as we're just getting going in this space, is being well guided in the households of this church. The virtuous women. Lord, I thank you for Proverbs 31 and the king reminiscing about all that his mother had taught him. We thank you for the women here, God, and I agree with the writer of Proverbs. Women are to be praised and honored in a public place. And so, Lord Jesus, we know that you honored your mother from the cross, and now we honor these women here because of the cross. And we say thank you for their lives, and for their testimonies, and for their backstories. The ones that have these incredible, virtuous, faith-filled backstories, and the ones who have backstories of being overcomers in this life. Both are backstories of your grace and goodness. And so, God, we honor you, we worship you. Father, I take just a moment and say thank you for the mothers here. But God, I also want to take a moment and pray for two other things. It's quite possible, and I don't know for sure, But there are women in this room who would like to be called mom, would like to be called mother, and that never happened for them. I pray, God, that because of your goodness and your faithfulness, that they are able to stand in this room this morning and be honored and rewarded in the same way, that that you would protect them from feelings that I know can affect women who never gave birth on a day like this. We're glad they're here, God. They're your daughters. Put your arms around them and take great care of them today. I know, God, that in this room there are some women of all ages who would like to go home and make a phone call. Who would like to say, hey, Mom, I'll meet you at such and such for lunch. Who would like to have sent a bouquet of flowers. Who would like to have mailed a card. But they can't do that because Mom's with you. And so somehow, Father, in their prayer lives today, and I don't really know how all of heaven worked at this stage, but that some of those women in this room this morning would share prayers, that somehow in the glory of heaven, those prayers would be received through you and to them. But God, for those whose hearts hurt today because they can't do that, pray that you would give great comfort and great peace, great strength. And we thank you, God, for great memories that we can store in our heart and treasure forever. Father, we love you. We honor you. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Men, would you help me praise the Wendy's thing?